He thought it was a joke, just a passing comment, loud enough for his aides to hear, and quiet enough to pretend he didn't mean it. But inside the Royal Mews, where the late Queen's state limousine sat sealed behind glass, one sentence from Donald Trump changed everything. "I should take that car," he said. "Ship it to Washington. Symbolic gift." And when his aide reached for the latch, a royal guard did something no one had heard in that hall since the day of the Queen's funeral. He shouted, "Stand down!" The voice echoed like a gunshot through polished stone, sharp, clear, absolute. The cameras lowered, laughter stopped, and across the corridor, Queen Camilla herself froze mid-step as silence fell. But it wasn't just about a car. It was about protocol. It was about memory, and one man who refused to let it be claimed. Now, before we show you what was really sealed inside the Queen's final ride, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, and tap that subscribe button with the bell icon on so you never miss the next story they'd rather keep locked behind palace gates. The air inside the Royal Mews smelled like memory, a mix of leather, polish, and the faint electric hum of aging metal resting too long in silence. It was after dusk, the corridors dim but awake, fluorescent overhead lights casting steady reflections across polished marble. Along the western bay, a lone ceremonial vehicle sat beneath its glass canopy, the Queen's jet-black state limousine, untouched since her final procession. The light caught its chrome edges like water catching sun. Sergeant Edward Lisle moved slowly along the row, clipboard under one arm, gloved hand brushing the surface of a brass lock as he checked the bay seals. He'd done this walk 100 times. Inventory inspections were part of the routine, but this car was never just routine. Every guard knew that. It wasn't for parades. It wasn't for practice. It was final, like the woman it once carried. He reached the front of the bay and paused. Even now, months later, the limousine gave off a kind of hush, like it was still listening. The kind of car that didn't wait to be admired. It simply stood. Then, laughter. Unmistakable. Loud. American. The east doors swung open as former President Donald Trump entered, flanked by two aides and a lean palace attaché who already looked 3 steps behind. Trump's voice bounced off the curved ceiling like it belonged there. He walked like he was inspecting a showroom, stopping occasionally to point at plaques he didn't read. When he reached the limousine, he let out a low whistle. "Now that," he said, "is a ride." The aide closest to him chuckled dutifully. Trump looked over his shoulder. "What do you think? Ship this beauty to Washington. Stick the seal on the side and call it a diplomatic gift." His other aide grinned. "Want me to make a few calls?" Edward, still halfway down the corridor, heard every word. He didn't move at first, just blinked, then slowly turned to look, not at Trump, but at the vehicle. The Queen's car. The one she'd ridden in for her farewell journey through London. The one that had rolled past crowds holding flowers, bowed heads, quiet hands over hearts. And now someone had joked about taking it for a spin. Lyle's jaw tightened. His boots shifted. He closed his clipboard. One step forward, then another. Because some things didn't need to be funny, and some cars didn't move, just not without consequence. Edward Lisle didn't carry rank that impressed people like Trump. He wasn't a general or a diplomat or someone who issued orders in marble halls. He was a royal guard, a keeper of stillness, a man who knew how many seconds it took to walk from the north gate to the stables without looking down. Who could spot a disturbed carpet edge across 50 meters? Who had stood outside through sleet and camera flashes and 1,000 tourist grins and never once blinked out of rhythm? He wasn't meant to speak. He was meant to remember. And he remembered everything about that car. The day after the funeral, Edward had been assigned to escort it from Westminster back to the Royal Mews. There were no flowers, no applause. Just fogged glass, a soft ticking engine, and a silence that didn't feel like a pause. It felt like a period. He had watched as the maintenance staff gently wiped the handles and cleaned the glass, treating the vehicle like a widow being consoled. He'd stood at the edge of the bay when the seal came down, and no one had spoken a word for hours. Now from his position near the far corridor, he watched Trump lean slightly forward, hand brushing the hood. "Not a scratch," Trump said, admiring the finish. "Bet it still drives smoother than anything in the White House garage." His aide gave a low whistle. "You want this one, sir?" Trump laughed. "I'm not saying I want it. I'm saying it'd be symbolic, right? A kind of gesture between nations. Make a great museum piece. Or better, park it at Mar-a-Lago for optics." The joke sat in the air too long. The palace attaché didn't respond. The other aide, emboldened, stepped closer to the sealed bay controls and tilted his head. "This, the latch." He was already half reaching when Edward crossed the floor. The sound of polished boots on stone echoed, not fast, not loud, but clear. "Sir," Edward said, voice low, "that vehicle bay is sealed." The aide turned. "I'm just having a look. That latch is not for viewing." Trump glanced over, recognizing the uniform. "Hey, don't worry. We're not stealing it, just admiring. Beautiful design, classic British work. Maybe we'll get one custom built." Edward didn't answer. He looked to the aide. "Step away from the panel." The aide raised both hands, trying to look casual. "Sure, sure." But Trump waved it off. "Relax. I'll have my team send over some paperwork if it's that serious." He turned toward his aide again. "Have someone draw up a quick request. Something about preservation transfer. We'll call it a diplomatic symbol. Big headline opportunity. Honoring the alliance." The aide nodded, pulling out his phone. "You got it." Edward's jaw clenched. "No requests have been approved, sir." Trump didn't turn this time. "Yeah? Well, you might want to check again." From down the corridor, a faint clicking echoed, the sound of high-heeled shoes on stone. Someone was coming, but Edward didn't move. He remained positioned 3 paces from the bay door, not blocking, not posturing, just present. A line drawn in silence. Trump's aide lowered his phone slightly, unsure now. "You want me to hold?" Trump shrugged. "Send it." "Worst they'll do is say no." But that was the problem. They weren't waiting for a yes. They were moving like they already had it. Edward didn't raise his voice. Not yet. He didn't have to. He just shifted 1 step forward, enough to change the balance of the room. "Sir," he said again, "that vehicle is not an asset. It is a sealed sovereign artifact, not for diplomacy, not for display, and certainly not for removal." Trump finally looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in the last 5 minutes, he didn't smile. The hum of the overhead lights seemed to grow louder, the kind of sound you don't notice until a room goes tense. Edward Lyle stood still, jaw set, eyes fixed on the control panel just behind Trump's aide, the one labelled Bay 4 State Limousine. It hadn't been touched since the Queen's final procession. Even the dust around it had its own pattern, settled like time itself. But now, under the careless curiosity of foreign hands, a gloved finger reached toward the latch. "Sir," Edward repeated, firmer, "do not touch that mechanism." Trump didn't respond right away. He was smiling for one of the cameras, a quick flash, a half-joke to lighten the room. "Relax," he said, voice echoing slightly under the high ceiling. "We're just looking. It's not like I'm taking it out for a spin." The aide gave a short laugh, the kind that's meant to sound harmless but doesn't, and then, with a soft metallic click, the latch released. The sound rolled across the chamber like a warning bell. A hiss of air followed as the pressure seal loosened, and for the first time since the Queen's passing, the bay doors shuddered open. The entire room seemed to inhale, and the limousine emerged like a ghost. Black lacquer, polished chrome, window glass still tinted from the procession. The interior lights flickered faintly as the bay sensors reactivated, illuminating the faint royal crest etched into the door panel. The one the Queen herself had insisted be engraved, not printed. Edward's chest tightened. The Queen's car was awake again. He stepped forward, one stride then another, as the aide moved to open the driver's door. "Stop," Edward said quietly. No one did. "Stop," he repeated, louder this time. The aide's hand brushed the handle. And that was it. The sound that tore through the Royal Mews wasn't just a shout. It was a command that felt carved from generations of drilled precision, amplified by stone and silence. "Stand down." It hit the walls like a thunderclap. Every tool, every drop of oil, every echo seemed to freeze mid-air. The aide jumped back, stumbling over his words. Trump flinched, half turning toward the sound, his expression flickering between surprise and offence. The palace attaché went pale. For a long second, no one moved. Even the limousine's engine sensors seemed to dim. Edward stood there, shoulders squared, face unreadable, voice still resonating in the rafters. His next words came slow and controlled. That vehicle does not move, not for display, not for export, and not for anyone. Trump blinked, trying to regain footing. You just shouted at me. Edward didn't answer. He stared straight ahead, not at Trump, but at the open bay. The breach. Trump's aide broke the silence, trying for humour. Guess he takes his job seriously. The palace attaché, however, wasn't laughing. He'd seen enough incidents turn bad to know when decorum had crossed into danger. "Gentlemen," he said quickly, "we should step away from the exhibit. Now!" From the side corridor came another sound, heels on marble. Camilla. She appeared at the archway, one gloved hand resting against the column as if steadying herself. She'd been in the adjoining gallery for a private viewing when she heard the echo. Her eyes went from Edward to Trump, then to the limousine still half uncovered beneath the glow. "What happened?" she asked softly. The attaché began to explain, but Trump cut in first, his tone trying to recover charm. "Nothing happened. We were admiring the craftsmanship, that's all. Your guard here," he gestured vaguely, "seems a bit sensitive about old cars." Camilla's gaze lingered on the limousine, her voice lowered, calm but cool. "That is not just an old car, Mr. Trump," he smirked. "So I've been told." "She drove that herself," Camilla said, stepping closer. "To Windsor, to Sandringham, to Balmoral. It was her last ride before the state hearse. It's been sealed ever since." Trump shrugged. "I respect that, but I was joking about taking it. You know how the media twists things. Then why is the bay unsealed?" No one answered. Camilla turned her head toward Edward. "Sergeant?" Edward's voice was steady, but it carried the weight of the room. "The seal was broken without clearance, ma'am. I issued command to cease access." Camilla studied him for a long moment. Then she looked back at Trump. "Then he did exactly what he was supposed to do." Trump's grin faltered. "Look, there's no need to dramatize, Guy." But she cut him off. "You don't understand. This isn't about ceremony. It's about sanctity." Edward remained silent, his breathing slowing back to rhythm. His shout had already cost him. Protocol dictated that guards did not raise their voices before dignitaries. But right now, standing between power and memory, he didn't care. The aides exchanged glances, unsure of the hierarchy in play. The attaché cleared his throat. "I'll re-engage the seal, Your Majesty." Camilla nodded. "Do it." The heavy bay doors began to slide shut again, motor whirring, until the Queen's car disappeared behind steel once more. The latch locked with a clean metallic click. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was absolute. Camilla turned to Edward. "You may stand down, Sergeant." He lowered his head, voice soft. "Ma'am." Then, "To Trump." And it was the first time she allowed a hint of sharpness in her tone. "Some things, Mr. Trump, are not for claiming. Not by anyone." Trump didn't reply. His aides quietly pocketed their phones. The cameras went dark. And as Camilla walked past Edward toward the exit, she whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "You did right to shout." Edward didn't move. He only watched the sealed bay, faint vibrations still humming from where the latch had closed. Because the sound that mattered wasn't his own voice. It was the echo that remained after silence returned. The chamber hadn't fully recovered from the shout. The echo might have faded, but its weight still lingered, in the posture of every aide, in the taut silence clinging to the walls. Then came the sound of certainty, sharp, measured footsteps entering from the west archway. The king's equerry arrived, clipboard tucked under one arm, eyes already scanning the room, like he'd walked into a live grenade. "Someone want to explain why the state limousine is showing an unsealed log?" he asked calmly. Trump's aide stammered first. It was just opened slightly. A misunderstanding." Camilla stepped in before the lie could find footing. "It was sealed by the Queen herself," she said coolly. "That directive stands until the sovereign says otherwise." The equerry nodded once, tapping his tablet. "Code 2A, he confirmed. "Final conveyance. Status, static. No movement, no export, no display." Trump scoffed lightly. "It's a car. A beautiful one. I made a comment, half a joke, and your guy here decided to shout like we were committing treason." Edward stood rigid, silent, until the equerry turned toward him. "Sergeant?" "Observed breach," Edward replied. "Verbal warning issued. Protocol defended." Camilla raised a hand. "And rightly so." Trump let out a flat laugh. "This what diplomacy looks like now? Getting barked at by palace guards?" "No," Camilla said. "This is what it looks like when a man protects what was never his to give away." Trump opened his mouth to respond, but the equerry cut in. "Bay has been resealed. Logs updated. Report will be filed." He glanced at Edward. "Debrief to follow." "Yes, sir." Trump turned toward his aide. "We're leaving." But Camilla remained. She approached Edward, her tone now quieter. "You know you breached silence protocol." "Yes, ma'am." "And that consequences follow breaches." He nodded. She studied him, then said plainly, "You won't face them." You acted as she would have wanted. Edward didn't reply. He couldn't. The knot in his throat held everything in place. The equerry stepped forward. "Sergeant Lyle, dismissed from post until reviewed. Temporary relief effective now." Camilla immediately countered. "Override that. Inform the king he may speak with me directly." The equerry blinked. "Yes, ma'am." Edward's voice returned, quieter than before. "I appreciate the clarity." Camilla nodded once, not gently, not coldly, just firmly. "Return to your duty." He turned to salute, but before he could, she added, "You did right to shout." Trump was already walking out, his aides trailing, phones silenced, jokes abandoned. Only Edward remained, standing before the sealed bay, its control panel now glowing soft blue. The limousine within lay untouched. The Queen's seal, preserved once again. No headlines, no scandal, just silence restored. And one man who knew exactly why it mattered. The Mews emptied fast. Trump's entourage was ushered through the stone corridor without a word, aides whispering behind tight jaws. The king's equerry lingered briefly to log the final seal confirmation, then disappeared into the hush with a clipped farewell. Edward Lyle stood alone, the echo of footsteps fading until only the soft tick of fluorescent lights remained. The Queen's car sat behind reinforced glass once again, its chrome trim dimly reflecting the bay's amber lighting. He exhaled slowly, not out of relief, but out of control. For the first time in his career, he had shouted in uniform, not barked a command, not raised volume during drill, shouted with weight, with judgment. His voice still felt raw. A quiet cough echoed from the far arch. One of the senior attendants approached, older than most of the guard, dressed in maintenance greys. "Didn't expect to hear that sound tonight," he said, nodding toward the sealed bay. Edward offered a half smile. "Nor did I." The man folded his arms. "She rode in that car alone, more times than most remember. Never liked having drivers. Said it made the monarchy feel detached. Drove herself to the barracks once, just to shake hands with the stable staff." Edward nodded. He remembered that story. Everyone did. The attendant added, "Took nerve to do what you did." "I'm not sure if it was nerve," Edward said. "It just happened." The older man grinned. "That's how you know it was right." He left a beat later, leaving Edward in the mechanical hush once again. At 2300, Edward ran a manual diagnostic on the bay. The report came back clean. No damage, no security override. But he ran it twice, then a third time, before powering down the panel. He walked the perimeter slowly. The bay's glass shimmered faintly under the cold interior light, and the limousine inside, the Queen's limousine, looked as untouched as the night it was sealed. He remembered carrying the ceremonial key that day. It was handed to him by the Princess Royal, who had said only one thing as she placed it in his glove. "This doesn't belong to us anymore. It belongs to silence." That line returned now. He moved to the corner locker, retrieved the inspection chain, and clipped it through the interior latch. His hand hesitated briefly, not out of uncertainty, but to feel the cool metal. There was something final about the gesture, even if the bay had already been resealed. The chain was symbolism, not just security. As he secured the last link, a motion alert pinged on his duty tablet. A new order. Temporary hold on disciplinary action, suspended. By order of Clarence House. Comments. Sergeant Lyle acted within moral bounds of ceremonial protection. Review unnecessary. Edward blinked. That meant one thing. The king had seen the incident log and overruled the chain of discipline himself. He placed the tablet back on the charging cradle without expression. Not relief, not pride, just acknowledgement. Just before midnight, Edward walked back toward the garage entrance and paused beside the sealed bay one final time. The hall was still now, not a silence of emptiness, but of completion. He glanced through the glass. The limousine sat quiet, regal, untouched. He stepped close and adjusted the inspection tag. Yee. A small detail, easily missed, but one the Queen would have noticed. Then, without a word, he straightened his back, checked the uniform crease at his cuff, and clicked his heels together once, soft but ceremonial. He exited the Mews alone. Outside, a gentle rain had begun. Inside, the Queen's car slept on, untouched, undisturbed, and exactly where she left it. By dawn, the Mews had returned to stillness. The air inside the garage felt colder now, as if the building itself had exhaled after holding its breath all night. The bay lights glowed faintly blue in standby mode, and the Queen's limousine sat untouched behind the sealed glass. A black silhouette resting beneath the crown crest, soft condensation beginning to gather near its windshield edges. Edward Lyle stood quietly in the access vestibule, gloved hands folded behind his back, eyes fixed on the inspection monitor. He hadn't gone home. He hadn't spoken since Camilla left. He didn't need to. At precisely 06:10, a private courier arrived through the north gate. No fanfare, no royal insignia, just a quiet man in formal grey, delivering a sealed envelope from Clarence House. The king's equerry handed it to Edward without a word. He opened it slowly, unfolding the single sheet of thick parchment. Her Majesty's ceremonial vehicle remains assigned to Station 4 of the Royal Mews per the late Queen's instruction. This directive is not subject to reassignment. No violation occurred. Beneath it, a signature. Charles R., not a stamp. Ink. Handwritten. Edward stood there for a long moment, rereading the line that mattered most. No violation occurred. The sound of distant hooves drifted in from the courtyard. The day had begun. Stables rustled to life, radios clicked on in the side offices, and staff began returning to their posts as though nothing unusual had happened the night before. And yet, everyone knew something had. He folded the document, slipped it into his inner pocket, and stepped back into the garage alone. The limousine's outline caught the rising light through the high windows, its long, quiet body gleaming faintly beneath the metal bay's sealed edges. He approached slowly. No ritual this time, no inspection protocol, just him and the car. He didn't touch it. Instead, he stopped exactly 3 paces from the glass, where the vehicle's front grille perfectly reflected the overhead flag, now visible through the skylight above. The Union Jack. It rippled faintly in the breeze. Not at full mast, not in mourning, just still. Alive. He took a slow breath, and in that moment, the memory returned. The final procession down the Mall, the crowd's silence deeper than any military parade, the carriage window catching sunlight as it passed, the Queen inside nodding faintly to a nation not ready to let her go. That same car now stood in front of him, sealed not with locks, but with choice. Not a relic, a decision. Behind him, one of the younger guards entered and paused at the doorway. "Sir?" Edward didn't turn. "All quiet?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Let it stay that way." The junior guard hesitated. Then, quietly, "Sir?" Was it true? He tried to take it. Edward didn't answer for a moment, then said softly, "He tried to claim it." "And you stopped him?" Edward nodded once. "No one claims what isn't theirs, not while I'm standing." The younger man said nothing else. He didn't need to. Edward remained by the glass for another few minutes, not to guard it, not to monitor anything, just to bear witness, because the car didn't need protection. It needed presence. And sometimes loyalty wasn't quiet. Sometimes it had to be heard but all once, so silence could return. He finally stepped back, adjusted the crease on his sleeve, and walked away without looking back. Outside, the rain had stopped. The flag above Buckingham stirred once in the wind, and beneath it, the Queen's final ride sat in shadow and chrome, untouched, unseen, and, once again, undisturbed. Was the Royal Guard right to raise his voice, even when standing before a world leader? Should the Queen's final limousine remain untouched forever? Or is there ever a moment when legacy can be shared? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you believe some symbols should never be repurposed, no matter who's asking, go ahead and tap that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on so you never miss the next untold moment behind the palace gates. And if someone you know still remembers the Queen's final procession, share this video with them tonight. Because every day, the Guard still stands. And behind him, there's always another story. Watch our other videos now appearing on screen, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, with a brand new one.